tout, unless he was a tout,
Yeah.
Because Valerie's saying they couldn't. It wasn't that they couldn't charge him; they said they wouldn't charge him. But there's a big difference here. They've
Yeah,
obviously
of course.
they've got the evidence here to charge him, but for some reason we're not going to charge him at the moment. So what was happening there? Really, what was happening? I mean, it's
Well, these are the questions that need to be asked. These are the questions that I think
that need to be answered. Once they're asked,
answered.
they've got to be answered.
They absolutely need to be answered, mate. So by 1971, the Troubles, they'd been running for 3 years, and the security situation was bleak. That's the word they've used in the inquiry here. It says the number of deaths in Northern Ireland attributed to the Troubles spiralled from 25 in 1970 to 177 throughout 1971. All the indications were that the situation was only going to get worse, and the British Army had been deployed on the streets since August 1969. They were originally welcomed by the Catholic minority. That honeymoon period had passed, and they were now regarded by a substantial section of that community as an instrument of oppression. And it goes on furthermore to say soldiers from Great Britain came to view the tours of duty in Northern Ireland with some kind of
there was trepidation.
This is Yeah.
Because, I mean, what was happening was, I remember, as I say, I was a young man at that time. They were going to foreign lands and not being funny about it, but they could tell who was foreign. Wherever they were, right? But over Northern Ireland, it was Caucasians, so therefore they didn't know who the good guys and who the bad guys were.
Yeah. I mean, it says here, 3 soldiers, all murdered in February 1971, had been killed in the Troubles. Dougal, Joseph and John, who were the first to be killed while off duty, and I think that this is what we need to remember here. Dougal, Joseph and John were murdered while off duty, so they were off duty British soldiers when they were killed. By the end of 1971, 43 more soldiers were killed in the province.
Yeah, because I mean,
that's just
watching that documentary. They were invited to a party. They'd been out as squaddies do. They went out for a few beers. They got drinking with the locals. And they were trying to sort of win hearts and minds at that time. Still, remember, they were sort of trying to still appear to be a peacekeeping force, rather than, as you say, they were now being viewed as oppression.
Yeah.
But they were invited to a party. The 2 guys they met in the last pub, they were in Kelly's Cellar or something, I think he said. I mean,
that's the one.
And invited to a party. They jumped in the car, went to the party. The car gets stopped, bang, bang. One was shot once in the back of the head. One was shot twice in the back of the head. The other one was shot 3 times in the back of the head. More or less at the spot where the small memorial is, as the guy said, with the photographic evidence, they tried to sort of erect a monument as close as possible to the actual geographical spot where the atrocity took place.
Yeah. I mean, that is the story which most people know, and I think tonight's broadcast should be to look at the story and get more of the facts surrounding it. Really, can I look at more of the inner workings and get right to the bones of it. And it's like you said earlier on, John, at the time of his murder, he was 17, and it was only after that the British Army increased the minimum age for a soldier to serve Northern Ireland to 18, and that was in direct response to the fact that John was only 17 at the time of his murder. Now, at 17-year-old, you're not a man, you're a boy.
You can't legally go and buy a drink.
No, you're a boy. Don't get me wrong. You joined the army. You took a huge step. You're going to serve Queen and country. But at the end of the day, you're 17 years old. You've not lived at all.
Yeah, and as that guy that was in the documentary that I watched today said, they stood out like a sore thumb. They're there, broad Scottish accents with very short hair. So obviously they're standing out as being squaddies. They're trying to make sort of friends. They're trying to sort of just a bit of Bonamy was in the local community, going to 2 or 3 pubs. They mentioned the pub's name. It was just the last one stuck in my mind. The last one ended up Kelly's Cellar, around about 6 o'clock at night. Invited to a party where there's going to be more drink. There's probably going to be women. So you see young boys off duty. Oh, I will have a bit of that. That's the last MD scene of them. They get taken away in a car and brutally murdered.
Yeah, mate, I mean...
Valerie's right. At that time, you couldn't vote. In fact, you still can't vote unless it's a referendum being gerrymandered by the SNP. You still can't vote until you're 18.
Mate, I think it's... I mean, we are going to go into a lot more facts and things in regards to all, but what you're saying is absolutely right. It's 17. You're not old enough to do all the things a man can really do, in terms of voting and buying alcohol and yada yada yada. I think that's why when you look at John being the younger of the 2 brothers and the youngest of the 3 boys, you look at it with it makes you really sad and upset. Yeah, all 3 of them, it really upsets you and it makes you sad. But the fact that you look at John and say you're a 17-year-old boy, and what always sticks in my mind when I'm thinking about it, especially on the drive up to the smaller memorial at Whitebury, you see, at the time you have 3 young soldiers. They were all young. You know, the oldest was only 23. You're in this vehicle and you are driving through a country which you don't really know your way about at all. I always say to myself, at what point in that journey from the bar to the point where they were brutally murdered, did they ever realise before it happened that they were in trouble?
Probably not, because again, I'm only going with the documentary because they said it was 2 guys. They reckon they were from Ardoyne, sort of drove them there, but they didn't take part. No, sorry, I tell a lie. The gunmen were allegedly from Ardoyne. I can't remember where they said the 2 guys that took them at the party. So obviously they're supplying the transport. So they've actually ensnared them. Come on, lads, we'll go to a party, knowing full well up the road there's an ambush, a cowardly ambush, bushwhack. That's all they were. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, because you see the guys in the Memorial Fund, right? You see the guys in the 3 Scottish Soldiers Memorial Fund. They always say, when you're out at different events and things, you always hear the words that say, like Christ, they were betrayed in a town, taken to a hill and murdered by cowards. So I don't know if you have ever kind of heard it kind of described. I've
never heard it put up. But I can see
it has been said. Like Christ, they were betrayed in a town, taken to a hill and murdered by cowards.
Yes, well, I mean, there is a sort of, you can sort of draw put a mirror image to that. Yes. If I could just come in and interact a wee bit with the lobby, if you don't mind, Chris, because sure. Valerie's saying they shouldn't have been drinking, and she's sort of saying legally they shouldn't be. But, well, let's have it right. If you're prepared to be putting on a uniform and go and fight for Queen and country, you're entitled to a drink, Nancy. I mean, there's not a 17, I don't know, MD17 that's never had a sort of drink. It's the same, it reminds me sort of a few years ago, if you remember, Prince Harry was over in Vegas and he was stripped bollock naked in a pool room and he was drinking and there was women, there was all sorts. And people were complaining about that and I went, catch a grip there, because at any time after they're going to be back out into the theatre of war after they've had their leave. So don't dare criticise young boys in their early 20s with a few quid, a right few quid in their pocket when it comes to Prince Harry and his mates, but a few quid in their pocket, we try and get their leg over, try to get a few beers out of their neck because they don't know what's happening next week when they're out there facing the enemy. So I'm sorry, no, they were entitled to go for a drink, and it was a shout of cowardly scum that sort of shot them. It was an atrocity.
I mean, I know I've just kind of, I know I've just said it, but again, I've just kind of faded out there, and I've went back into my mind, and I can't help but keeping on thinking. I keep on kind of putting myself in or trying to put myself in the position of one of the three boys. So try to kind of live in their shoes where this was going on. And I'm trying to say to myself, were they happy drunk, or were they a little bit tipsy? Were they not even drunk at all? Did they just have a few beers? Were they happy-go-lucky, just young boys, innocent to a point, just innocent young boys, and with honest intentions they went in a vehicle. Now, did they end up at the White Braes, and were they brutally murdered, and it all happened so fast, or in that vehicle did one of them turn to the other and say, we're in trouble here, this isn't correct?
And
to me,
I don't know. I think if that had sort of twigged, there's three of them, I think they would have overpowered the driver and his mate, three young soldiers. No, I think they'd have been well able enough to sort of knock them out.
I mean, that is an opinion, but then another part of you comes in. I mean, I didn't know these guys, so I don't know the mentality, but I know from speaking kind of my own opinion, if it were me and you've realised I'm in trouble here, I don't know what to do, you would freeze to a point, I would imagine. You would either go for it and overpower the driver, like you said, try and get
40 odd years ago, the things were different. They're only young boys, they've had a few beers, they might have been lulled into a false sense of security. They might have been sort of saying, you're going to get a good you're going to get a right good night about women there, about all sorts, all the nonsense you'll get up to. So no, I think, and probably had a few beers. They were the first three soldiers executed, so therefore there was no history to go back. I mean, not long after that, they were telling soldiers, don't wear your uniforms, do not go hitchhiking, because you're easy spotted. They were always worried that squaddies trying to save a few quid going back, going to town, coming back from town, don't hitchhike. Even though you've not got your uniform on, you're standing out there at attention, short hair, someone on a lift, somebody's going to pick you up off the street and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, they were putting powdered glass into sandwiches that they were giving them, Chris, at that time. Scum from the cradle to the grave. I repeat it.
Ian, I'm going to take this opportunity tonight to give out another wee burst of information in regards to the run-up before we take a musical interlude and we kick off with our first interview of the evening, which is going to be done live from here where I am, PO Community Hub in Glasgow, and we're going to have a live interview with one of the family members, who was a family member of the oldest of the three boys, Dougal. So we'll get them on within the next kind of 10-15 minutes, but I'm going to kind of blast out to you more information here. Now, if I do lose you at all, you can get in touch with us through Facebook, Twitter, email studio@purcommunityradio.com, that will come straight through to me, or you can call us live on 0141 416 1690. Now, at 2:05 PM, so 2:05 in the afternoon on Wednesday, March 10th, 1971, Dougal, Joseph and John left Girdwood Barracks to spend the afternoon on recreational leave in Belfast city centre. They were under orders to return to the barracks by 6:30 that evening. So they were getting ready, old kind of the old army way, getting your shower and shave, young guys getting ready to go out and enjoy themselves on some rec leave. They were told when they left the camp, you must be back here for curfew 6:30 in the afternoon. They spent the afternoon drinking in the Abercorn bar, then Mooney's bar, and finally Kelly's cellar, all of which were in the Cornmarket area of Belfast. At about 6:30, they were in Kelly's cellar with two men, one of whom was named by witnesses as Suspect 1. He was an ex-British Army soldier from the Ardoyne who worked as a postman in Belfast. So 6:30, they were in Kelly's cellar with two men, one of whom was named by witnesses as Suspect 1, ex-British Army soldier who worked in Ardoyne as a postman. When the three soldiers did not return to their barracks by 6:30,